Welcome everyone to the panel titled B2C Social Media Case Studies. I'm excited to have you here at the Digital Growth Summit.
Famous fairy tale characters and their teenage daughters.
I'm Amelia. I'm the manager of social media for Transparent Financial Services Company.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny Weigel, and I'm here representing the Salesforce Exact Target Marketing Cloud. Get that? Yes, that is our company title. Exact Target was acquired by Salesforce last year. You might be familiar with some of our brands, the Exact Target email platform, Radiant6, Buddy Media, Social.com. So I'm talking to you today from the perspective of a social media consultant, but if some of you are catching my social accounts, my position has changed. I still have a lot of great information I could share with you on the B2C clients that I advised on social media strategy.
Awesome. Well, let's dive right on into it. And we'll start here with Sarah. Sarah, walk us through, when it comes to social media, B2C specifically, we're talking to consumers, what do you see that's working these days? And then also, feel free to share with us what might have been working a year ago that's no longer working.
Well, I think what's really working for us these days is a heavy focus on imagery and also video. We found that focusing on anything text heavy, whether it's on Facebook or whether it's on Twitter, is no longer working in the way that it used to 1 year or maybe 2 years ago. We've also found that our best content is emotional. So we've made a complete 180. Our brand about a year ago was really focused on sharing news, sharing anything that was really timely through our social channels, and we've thrown that out the window. So in the past year, we've focused on calls to emotion. And we found that right now, especially when you're looking at all of the BuzzFeeds of the world and all of those very socially shareable content that's out there that really tugs at your heartstrings, it's important for brands to focus on emotionally driven content. So once we made that huge switch, that 180 from the news angles to the calls to emotion, we increased our Facebook engagement alone about 60%. So just that simple content change was enough to make a dramatic impact without having to have any spend on our social channels.
What's working and not working?
Agreeing with Sarah, definitely on the content front. It's all about creating unique content per platform. So what works on Facebook might not work on Instagram and vice versa. What works on Twitter isn't going to work on Tumblr. So really segmenting your social platforms and ensuring that you're putting enough resources to create unique content for each platform. Another trend that we're starting to see is really moving away from this mass messaging type consumer relationship and more to one-to-one. So having that direct dialogue with your consumer, really working with your community managers to respond in real time and listen and react. That's something that we're really putting a priority on.
That's great. Hey, quick question. Do you guys want to use the mic? Should we turn that on? Is that better for you? Yeah, let's do that. I'm so sorry, Amelia. Let's go on to Bianca. Bianca, what's working in social and what's not working?
So it's a little special for me just because I work in a very regulated industry. I work in more consumer-facing CPG hospitality. But for financial services, what's important is the customer service component. So what we've established at the corporate level is a command center. People are using social media for customer service issues, but they've been accustomed to getting their answers quickly. So we've established this command center to really address the needs in about an hour on weekdays and then 3 hours on the weekends. And through the system of the command center, we have an integrated command center within that really has the communications heads of departments that are going to respond to our customers in a timely manner. It's really a challenge.
Oh, I'm sorry, where did you work before this? Give us a quick rundown on what you did.
So I worked at a PR firm, it was called Burson Marsteller, and I worked with brands like Sony Electronics, Ford Motor Company, the state of Nevada, so the Nevada Commission on Tourism.
Before that is what I was interested in, I'm sorry.
I actually met Josh. I'm born and raised in Vegas, so I worked at MGM Resorts.
We meet a lot of Vegas people today. They've been here for the whole conference. It's amazing. So MGM Resorts.
Right.
And what was that like? What was working there? I know it was a few years ago, but I think that's a really interesting story.
You had to be hugely innovative. So I know social media back then, people saw it as, hey, it's free. It's actually not free. But you can leverage your resources internally. So if you have a traditional marketing campaign, amplify that through social. There's always going to be a component that you can add to social, especially these days. If you're going to do pre-buzz for an event, at the event, and then post-event coverage. It just works for you in any type of channel, especially Twitter and Instagram. And for the younger demographics, for the ones that are more hip, Snapchat.
Awesome. Jenny, what's working and not working for your team?
What I've seen from our clients is actually, Amelia hit on it, one-to-one marketing, which is also being called personalization. Have you guys heard of that term out there? I think it's the hottest thing happening in social media, actually. Snapchat is a great example of it. Who's got a Snapchat account? That's it? Marketers in this room? Guys, you have to download you have to figure out how it's being used and how people are using it. I'm not saying go out and start Snapchatting, because I'm not going to tell you what to do. But, to get used to how people are using it, start following some people, some brands, and so you can see, what the hype is, or at least, how it's being utilized. McDonald's is a great example of when they launched their, back in the spring, they had a new product launch, and they heavily used Snapchat for that, and they got all kinds of press on it. Their social followings went up, not only on Snapchat, but their other accounts as well, because they promoted it across their social networks. So personalization, if you don't know about it, Google it after this session, I'm happy to talk to you more about it later.
Awesome. So why don't we start with you, Jenny, down on the end. Talk to us about some of the tools you're using across the board, and some of the technology tools or some of the ways in which you're working can be seen as a tool.
I use the Salesforce Exact Target Marketing Cloud. So, actually, I'm glad, you guys know I'm going to recommend those tools, but there is something that, feedly.com, and it's kind of the new way of catching up with, with feeds and API, especially since Google, shut down their tool. And the reason I live and breathe by Feedly, because I've got to keep up with what's happening, changes on Facebook, changes on LinkedIn, Instagram, all of the social networks. And I also want to catch the blog posts of the thought leaders out there. And so I've got them all loaded into Feedly, and I'm constantly checking the app, and even when I'm on my laptop, to get those news. And it's important that I tell my clients, Facebook has just made this major change. I just saw it come out on their blog post. This is going to impact your campaign in these ways. So it's important for me to stay on top of those, and Feedly is a great site for me to do that on.
That's great.
Actually, to support Salesforce, I absolutely love Radiant 6. It's the best listing tool out there. It's not very user-friendly, but the data that you can,
Let's be honest.
I'm just being honest. It's the data that you can extract from it is amazing, and just the strategies that you can so taking a look at the conversation that was surrounding your brand last year, you can pick the key points, the peaks of the conversation, and develop a strategy to really develop that conversation around it, so you can be proactive in addressing it. And then with anything that you saw as a negative, address it immediately and have that plan of action ready. But Radiant 6, you can do all types of mediums there: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, blogs, mainstream media. It's really a resourceful tool.
So we use, like most of my colleagues, content management tools as well as YouTube management tools. But at Mattel, I'm really lucky. We have an internal social media listening department as well as a digital analytics, and they sit right next to us. So I can launch a campaign and literally within 5 minutes be chatting with my social analytics counterpart and making changes as we go throughout the campaign, even on a daily or hourly level. So I've seen this become more and more common, where companies are starting to bring these solutions in-house, so that you have people, with all 100% stake in the game that you can work with to optimize your campaigns.
What are they using?
We're actually doing a tool kind of a refresh at this point. We have worked with Xeon in this moment. Full screen. There's a lot of great tools out there, but I think looking to bring more solutions in-house and try to create proprietary dashboards that really work for you and your brands is becoming more and more important.
Awesome. Sure.
So does anyone out here wish they had more social media budget? Anyone? So the tools I'm going to recommend are the cheapest, most free, actually, things out there. Has anyone here heard of Wobox? Yeah. It's like a Facebook promotions tool.
And that's WOOBOX?
Yes.
Okay.
So if anyone's doing a Facebook sweepstakes or promotion, or even a promotion on another platform, some of the tools within Wobox are free, so you can use them to augment any sort of campaigns that your in-house team or agency has created. So for example, they have a free tool that will randomize all of your entrants into a sweepstakes, and we'll do the winner selection for you, which will help from a legal perspective when you're building out your T's and C's. And they have a few other tools that are just very useful for doing things on the cheap when you don't necessarily have the budget that you would want to do so. If anyone is doing their own image editing, which sadly is something I often do, although I am not a graphic designer, if you don't have access to Adobe Creative Suite, I highly recommend using some of the free web-based tools. So Pixlr is fantastic. I've had a lot of success with it. There are varying levels of Pixlr. So whether you're experienced with something like Adobe Photoshop or whether you have no experience at all and want the easiest way to edit an image possible, there's an option for you. So if you're creating content but don't have the money for a more expensive tool like Adobe Creative Suite, it's definitely a great tool for you.
And that's Pixlr, I think it is that right? It doesn't have an E in it,
Yes.
am I right?
I think they misspelled their own name.
I think so. I think they do it on purpose.
Are you using Probist?
I'm not.
Anybody using Probist?
Probist?
Yeah, anybody in the room using
Like
Probist?
teacher.
Okay, better conversation.
Awesome. No, that's good. It's good to know.
I don't know how to use it, that's why.
Probist, Probist. It's interesting to know. I want to talk about a couple tools because I run an agency called MediaLeaders, and that's what we do by day. And this is my gift. You are all my guinea pigs. You're in this room, so it means it's working, right? We're using a lot of Hootsuite to listen because we're scrappy and we can't afford Radiant 6. Even though the world's biggest brands can, we work with big brands that have almost zero budget to do great things. So we're listening, and I'm listening to all of you today on Hootsuite using this hashtag above my head. We're also using Buffer to send stuff out. Bufferapp.com is something to look at. Even though I have a lot of friends at Hootsuite, and I'm very good friends with their case study team, Buffer app is something you can deploy. And how many of us have used Bufferapp.com? It's quite widely used these days. How many of us have used Hootsuite? So half Buffer. Most of the room has used Hootsuite.com. It's just a great pro tool. I wouldn't say it's the world's only tool out there. There's a better listening tool, but for responding and customer service for any type of scrappy brand, it's a great place to start. Would you agree or disagree? Please disagree with me.
There's definitely other tools out there as well.
Yeah.
Buffer is great. We actually use a startup, it's called Viral Heat. And the reason being is that because they are a startup and we're a larger corporation, they're willing to make changes to the API that we can link them to. So there's custom needs that we love them to do, such as for LinkedIn, they basically take away the previews from their publisher. So when you put in a link to where you're scheduling, it doesn't preview the image anymore, and that was impactful for our content on LinkedIn. So we asked our reps over at Viral Heat, and they're like, this is really against what we agreed upon with LinkedIn, but we'll do it for you. So I can introduce you to my rep.
Let me ask a bigger question. I think the topic this 6 months is Facebook dead? And I want all of you to tell me, I'm just going to say it, and I have a lot of friends at Facebook, but I advise a lot of people, and I put it in print. My book, when it came out 14 months ago, I said, stop using Facebook. Because if you try and get a like, you actually don't own it. Whereas you own the email and you own your URL and you can then reach people. Whereas you can use Facebook to listen. Am I wrong there? Let's go ahead and start right here and tell me if I'm wrong.
I
want you to
wrong.
disagree.
I don't think that people should stop using Facebook. In my opinion, find your audience and be where your audience is. My audience, given that we're an upscale brand that does appeal to a lot of baby boomers and older, my audience is primarily on Facebook right now. Does that mean that we're only going to be on Facebook? No, we need to be prepared for the future, and especially with Facebook's recent algorithm changes, we know that Facebook is not necessarily our future. We've diversified. We're focusing on really putting out a lot of great content on Pinterest, trying to do more with Twitter and Instagram as our audience slowly starts to adopt those platforms more, even though they're not there currently. So we are emphasizing the diversification of channels right now, but if our audience is on Facebook, why would we leave them? We just need to look at it in a different perspective. We know that we're not going to get the organic reach we used to. That's that. There's no use for us complaining about it now because it's done. Facebook is a business. We look at it more as an advertising platform. So our fan acquisition in the past, it's not necessarily all for naught. Now we consider it a way to keep our advertising more tailored. So when we're putting out our Facebook advertising, doing our promoted posts, we can focus on those users who've already expressed an interest in our brand.
Awesome, good answer.
I think that it also has to do with where your brand is. So, for example, Monster High we launched 3 years ago, and Facebook was still huge, and we've got a super highly engaged audience there still. We've got over 2 million fans, and our engagement rates continue to improve even with the algorithm changes. So, because that audience is so super engaged, we still are pushing out content to that platform. Now we are also adopting newer, more, like a Snapchat or a one-to-one messaging platform to reach a newer audience that may not necessarily be adopting Facebook as rapidly, as opposed to launching a brand new brand in 2015, 2016. Maybe then Facebook isn't the right solution for us at that point.
And that Monster brand, that's one of the Mattel brands?
Monster High, yes.
Monster High. Is that a little boy's brand or a little girl? Or?
It's a girl brand. It's
Okay.
a doll line based on the teenage daughters of famous monsters.
Okay, awesome. That's adorable.
Honestly, I don't think Facebook is dead. It's definitely a force we can still reckon with, especially with all the acquisitions. But the way that we utilize it for my company is really to push out content for financial literacy. So we don't think we're going to convert any leads. We do capture some, but they're more there to get the information that they need. So a lot of our promotions and sweepstakes, we've transitioned to microsites. So it can be cross-promoted on different channels. So everything from Facebook, we'll talk about it, we'll have ads running, but it'll push to a microsite. So we'll do the same thing with Twitter. Twitter is going to help with the click-through rates, and it'll generate traffic to the site. So that's our strategy. It's not going to go away. We're still paying a lot of money behind it because they want you to, but definitely not something that we shouldn't discount.
I don't think Facebook is dead. And if you think back to when Facebook came around, a little more than 10 years ago now, what was out there? Facebook and MySpace, right? Which one are you going to go to? We saw what happened there. And when it came out, what was the biggest demographic on Facebook? Right, college students. Okay, so, and it was only available to college students at first. Then when it opened up, the fastest flocking demographic was teens, and even people right out of college. So that younger demographic really helped to build Facebook, and they took pride in that they got to build up this cool new social network. Over time, moms and dads got on, grandmas, great-grandmas, they actually are more active on Facebook now. The younger demographic didn't want to be doing all their posting and sharing with their parents seeing everything. So they started looking to Twitter and now Instagram and all. There's also much more competition out there in social networks than when Facebook first came around. So to what these ladies said, you got to stick to your audience. If your audience is still active on Facebook, you absolutely need to be there. If your audience is semi-active, then start looking at these other areas where maybe they've picked up interest.
How many of you have a question for these panelists, these awesome ladies up here? Raise your hand if you have a social media question specific that you'd like to ask them. Okay, cool. So we don't have much. Let me do this. If you don't mind, we've all thought about a case study in your surveys. How about we start, Jenny, with you, and just walk us through a case study you've seen out there, whether it's your company or someone else, that has either gone well or not gone so well, and what we can learn from it.
Well, first off, I want to point you guys to an awesome resource with tons of case studies. The Exact Target Pinterest board has a board on there called the Social Swipe File. And we have pinned articles about social campaigns that we think are really unique and outstanding. And when our clients come to us and they want to do something with our platforms, but it's just not the typical thing, something new and amazing and different, we look to the Social Swipe File for some inspiration and ideas. So one thing I want to tell you off of that is Hasbro, the gaming company, did a Facebook campaign to add a new word to the script. I'm a geocacher, I was excited about that. And so I think that was really unique because, when you think of Hasbro and their games, I'm really not even sure what kind of content do they have a regular blog? What are they writing about? Gaming advice? That's awesome, but I thought this was a unique thing to their brand. They took something that only they could offer with their brand and allowed users to be a part of that. So if you're thinking about great content, don't just think about the tips and advice you can offer your consumers. Think about what your brand can offer as a way to engage people in a contest-like atmosphere like that. I thought it was really impressive.
I'm going to speak about one of our case studies for Transamerica. It actually involves one of our friends in the audience right here. He's worked for CGI. But we had a title sponsorship for the Rock and Roll Marathon. Some of you might be familiar with it in San Francisco. So we're not a sexy brand. Who cares about life insurance, investments, and retirement? But to make it sexy, we did a partnership with CGI to really ask people to show how they're training for the marathon by submitting a photo on Instagram and Facebook. So it was very integrated. It was housed on a microsite. And basically, that was a free buzz. But what you could win was a trip to our Transamerica Pyramid in San Francisco, VIP access at the marathon, and then a meet and greet with the talent, which is the neighborhood. So you might know the Sweater Weather song. So it was really cool in the sense where we were reaching individuals that weren't necessarily familiar with Transamerica. It was through this partnership and through the idea, the theme of encouraging healthy living for life insurance, that we could really make this great promotion that we would bring online to offline. And that's absolutely something that you should do. Social just isn't just behind your computer. It's widely adopted on mobile. It's probably more popular on mobile. You guys are all on your phones tweeting away about this great panel. But basically,
Awesome panel.
Right?
Awesome moderator.
The best. Sidetracked. But basically, it was just coverage of the whole marathon and then the post recap, just meeting the winners of the sweepstakes and seeing how excited they were to meet the neighborhood.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I mentioned before, which is really moving towards one-to-one consumer interaction and engagement. So a campaign that we are currently running and actually launched the brand with last year for Ever After High is a texting campaign. So we know that girls and tweens are on their phones. I mean, all of us are on their phones, but the new generation, absolutely, mobile is 100%. So in our effort to engage them, we launched a texting campaign where, and you all can do this right now, you text EAH, like Ever After High, to 91919. That's EAH to 91919. And we send out exclusive and VIP info about the dolls to all of the girls that opt in. So a way to ensure that this got out to as many consumers as possible is we partnered with Justice, which is a tween retailer at launch of the brand, and made sure that our texting campaign call to actions were on in-store signage, on hang tags, on accessories and clothing. And it's a really great way for us to speak directly to that consumer. So we'll push out all types of content, whether it be doll photography or exclusive info about a character or webisode sneak peeks. All of this content is pushed out through our texting campaign, and it's been super successful for us so far.
Cool.
So at Princess, one of the things that we tend to do best is integrating our social media with all of our media relations efforts. So one of our big successes was last year, where our latest ship, Royal Princess, was christened by Kate Middleton, the Duchess of Cambridge, who is arguably the most famous woman in the world, who, side note, is gorgeous in person, in case you're wondering. So this was a huge event for us. For a brand that typically is a little bit on the older and more elegant side, we're not necessarily flashy. So this was a huge opportunity for us on a marketing, PR, and social perspective. So given the excitement of having the Duchess of Cambridge present, we had some great media coverage around the event. So we made sure to integrate our social media efforts with the on-site media. We, in our pitches and in our on-site interaction with all of the press, we pressed them to use the hashtag. We promoted the hashtag, which was hashtag Royal Princess, naturally, all around the event site. And we made sure that all of the press had the tools and the on-site wireless access and a little bit of a social command center so they could share information about the christening socially. And that was tremendously successful for us. We ended up getting our hashtag to trend not once but twice, both in the US and the UK, despite the fact that the event happened at something like 6 in the morning US time. So not really the hottest time of day for people on social media. And all of that was done with less than a $20,000 budget for a social perspective. So we were using the tools we had in media relations to try and promote our social, since we didn't necessarily have the social resources that we would have wanted to do a different type of social campaign.
That's great. What kind of questions do you guys have? I have one more piece of content that we can ask these awesome people, but are there any social media specific B2C campaigns or issues or maybe controversies that you want to talk about right now? Like for me, saying that Facebook's dead, which I think I'm predicting the future, but it's okay.
Well,
I could be wrong. Yeah. Yes, over here in orange, and then we'll come over to you. Yes.
You had mentioned with Princess Reasons that your
consumers are older, they're less sophisticated, many of our users are older, they are on Facebook, but we do want to work towards expanding to other platforms. What have been some of the ones that you've found to be the most successful for the audience?
So if I can just repeat that for our viewers, what's the other most successful platforms other than Facebook that Princess Cruises is finding?
Well, for us, the other two most successful platforms are YouTube and Pinterest. So right now we're also on Instagram, Twitter, and Google+, but our audience, which is predominantly women tend to be the travel bookers and predominantly older, aren't as engaged on those platforms. We found on Pinterest, as we all know, it is heavily women, although there are men there. That tends to be strong because it's the same sweet spot as we would find on Facebook. And YouTube is huge. It's the #2 search engine. So we can't discount that as a social network. We have about 10 million views on our YouTube channel that we've built over time because we're consistently producing content, and it's searchable content. It's content that meets what our demographic is searching for there.
How many of you have a YouTube channel? Raise your hand for your brand. Okay, predominantly this side of the room, 80%, and then about 30% over there. Cool. Real quick, if you don't mind me, why don't you ask a question, then I have a good question for that.
I mean, it's kind of along your lines. I mean, I guess it depends what company you're coming from and what you're doing, but Twitter feels better like overthrowing governments than it does for getting customers these days. Maybe we're not doing it right, but what do you find that works best?
Do you have a specific person you want to ask for getting customers?
No, I mean,
How about we ask Amelia, since she's targeting a very unique consumer brand?
Sure. So the way that we are currently using Twitter with our U.S. partners is working with retailers to offer deals, promotions, coupon codes for mom. So really targeting mom and enabling her to get a deal, go shop online, or go shop at a brick and mortar store. Even as the global digital team, we're always really taking into consideration our local markets. And everything's ultimately driving to how do we drive conversion and really get people to purchase our product. So Twitter is one of the main channels that we're using for that.
Very cool.
Just to add to that, working for Transamerica, I discovered that financial services is actually the #2 topic discussed on Twitter. So what we've been doing is actually one of our main channels to really communicate and just get people to have that financial literacy by linking out to our blog and content partners. For general awareness, it's something that I've taken from other industries. We've done Twitter parties. So it actually works with financial services too. We'll find a mom blogger sometimes or someone that's more financially savvy like Widespread. And they'll post a 1-hour online event to really just generate buzz, ask people questions. There's prize incentives, and people really feed into that. We've actually trended a couple different times for a brand like ours, so that's been one of our wins.
Let me, Jenny, let's start with you on what are some blunders, or any of you can do this if you feel comfortable. What are some blunders that you've made in the B2C social media space that we can all learn from? It could be a personal blunder, your company, or you could talk about another company.
This is not a client, but since it was recently in the news, I just have to talk about it. I was astounded. Was it US Air, the intern thing?
Yeah.
And if you don't know the situation, it happened on Twitter, and an intern was running the account and responding to a tweet from someone else, and thought they were attaching a certain picture to help with this case, and they attached an inappropriate picture. But to me, that tells me that brands are still, I'm sure it definitely was a mistake and everything, but are interns the people who should really be running your accounts? I think it's great for an intern to get experience and see, how a company runs an account. But the person running your Twitter account is your company spokesperson on Twitter. And big companies, make sure that their CEOs and top level people are the people talking on CNN and on broadcast media, but they're not paying enough attention to the people talking on social media yet. I think it should be at the same caliber level personally. So I think that that's a lesson for brands to learn from that experience.
I'm not going to call it a specific case just because that's the type of person I am. But in general, if you're going to make a mistake in social, especially, it's just something to learn from, especially that it's completely new. And fortunately for our executive board, they're very open and they see campaigns that don't perform as successful as they should. as a case study. It'll be a benchmark. So don't be afraid to test what you think you want to do in the social space. I think it's more so about taking the chance and then just learning from that.
I agree. I think that, as a big global brand, if something goes wrong, then the best thing to do is to be vocal about it. Being silent is basically nailing your coffin shut. So that's the beauty of social media, is you can go back and reply and try to rectify something that could have gone not the way that you planned.
I think I'm going to go a little bit more tactical in my response. So I did make a blunder this year. I will own up to it. It was on the Princess Cruises account. So does everybody remember when Facebook loosened their restrictions on sweepstakes and contests and allowed you to run one directly in a post right on the newsfeed as opposed to having to do it on the tab? So given that when something new happens, if we have the resources, we do love to test it. I decided I would test that out. And per recommendation of our legal counsel, they recommended that we should notify the winner we select through a comment on their Facebook comment. We received, in the course of 3 days, something like 15,000 entries. So if you've ever tried to open up every entry in a Facebook thread that's 15,000 posts long, you can understand why it took a team of 2 people 8 hours to be able to open up everything without a computer freezing. So, the consumer never knew that we went through that on the back end. Will my community manager ever forgive me for making her sit through those 8 hours? Probably not. So if you are going to test out one of those timeline sweepstakes, make sure that you find a different mechanism for reaching out to the winner and push back on your legal if they recommend that. But also, given the recent changes in Facebook's algorithm where they're pushing back on content that is like bait or comment bait, where you're specifically asking for likes or asking for comments, you're probably not going to get organic reach anyway if you do a Facebook post that's a sweepstakes. So at this point with that algorithm change, I would say that it's not even a worthwhile endeavor.
I have a tactical tip that we've learned the hard way. I don't think we've made the mistake, but my team runs Facebook and Twitter for Amtrak California, the train system that goes up and down. So we see a lot of angry customers because trains quite often are sometimes late. It's unfortunate. There's one set of tracks and things get in the way of tracks, like cars and traffic and all kinds of stuff. So we found, and I heard this at another conference I went to, some very smart social media people said use 2 different dashboards for clients. So one for your personal and one for your clients. So if you log in on Hootsuite, it's just corporate. If you log in on personal, you're using some kind of a different app, completely different psychological, I need to click that app and I'm only talking personal. And the reason is so many of us are complaining these days. And I wrote a book on how to not complain called Light, Bright, and Polite. Don't say anything that's stupid, that your clients wouldn't be proud of you accidentally sending out on one of these huge brands. And so we try and do that as much as possible, or we will physically separate the icons of clients versus personal. And another tactical tip that I had to learn through politics when I ran was everything you say behind the scenes, and we've seen it in the news, unfortunately, in the NBA, everything you say should be something that's clean, that you're proud of everyone hearing. And it's because it's going to end up being recorded like it is today for thousands of people to see. And journalists would like nothing more than to put you up on a billboard or on their TV show or on their in their newspaper saying, oh, look at this bozo. And it's unfortunate, but so that's one of our tips, is use different dashboards or build it into your process. Would you agree with that? Do you guys have or you ladies have the personal account within the same dashboard, or is it separated?
I use 2 completely different tools. I use TweetDeck only for personal, and I don't ever use TweetDeck for my professional accounts, just because I need to know that when I'm going into it, it's definitely just mine. I'm terrified of making that mistake, as I'm sure a bunch of us are, so the more separated it is, the better.
Yeah, I agree. I even carry 2 iPhones, one just for work and one for personal, just for that very factual. And I think it's really important to also go through the necessary process of really thinking about content before you're pushing it out, obviously. We're always going through at least a couple of rounds of edits and approvals and tweaks just to ensure that everything that we put out is something that we want everyone to see. And then adjusting, as we learn more.
I actually use two different browsers. So Chrome is my default for work, and then Firefox is personal. But that's how I keep it separated. As far as content, I can't get away with anything from my lawyers. They want everything approved. I did send out something that was a little bit more engaging and not so services or product recently. It was about Mean Girls, 10th anniversary. So in case I look it up, follow Trend America. I have my setup exactly as Bianca's.
That's awesome. Okay, we have about 8 minutes for some questions. Do you have any B2C questions? Any tactical things that you'd love some advice on or ideas? Yes?
I'm curious about Snapchat. So, my community managers in talent, and a lot of them haven't adopted Snapchat because you can't really build influence there. You guys all kind of talked about Snapchat. So I'm curious, like, what is the engagement like? How do you track it? Are you using it for your brands? And what do you where are the results usually from?
So the question for the viewers is about Snapchat. How do you use it to build influence?
I think you can absolutely build influence on it. Just like any other channels, you start gaining a following, you start getting a name for yourself on Snapchat. It's not, from the regular user standpoint, you can't measure it yet. And so it would be very difficult, it is very difficult for any old brand to do that, but I don't think that should be what's stopping you from checking it out, or at least getting familiar with it. I heard rumors that they're creating an enterprise version for companies to be able to use it, brands, and then they can track the measurements and so forth on the back end. I do know personally that McDonald's was in a special arrangement with them to get some metrics on that campaign that they did with LeBron James and the product announcement. Don't let that stop you. And don't let that stop you, I think, on any new platform. Just because they're not offering your brand measurements yet doesn't mean you shouldn't go out there and at least start experimenting or at least being a lurker, a friendly lurker. I mean, before I ever did anything on Twitter, I lurked for 3 months. Before I ever put anything out myself on Snapchat, I lurked for 2 months. I like to get the feel of the things before I feel comfortable putting out there. It puts a lot of pressure on my first post, too.
Very wise. Any other questions? That's a good question about Snapchat. Yes, Gary.
Excuse me. What's your advice on creating like a dedicated support Twitter handle? I've seen some large corporations have two Twitter.
That's a good question. What's your advice on creating a dedicated support Twitter handle?
I think absolutely if you have the resources, if you have that dedicated body to actually address all the customer service issues, then it's absolutely something that you should pursue. Customer service probably takes up, I want to say 40% of my dedicated person's time in just managing everything from negative sentiments or the bad reviews or the issue with the policy to just general questions. So just diverting it to a handle if you have the resources is definitely going to be a great solution.
Very wise. So we have about 1 more minute for questions, and then we're going to wrap it up. Any other questions? Yes, down here in front, Eric Blue.
So we found that at our company that it's empowering to allow people at the company beyond just the social media folks to be out there in the social media space, because we find that the people who are really passionate about our own company are very passionate on Twitter, Facebook, and whatnot. I just wanted to hear from someone's examples that you guys have seen success with trying to get people within your own corporation to be active, and then also how you can help guide them in the right way beyond just.
Well, that's a big question, Eric. Okay, cool. Go ahead.
So at Mattel, a couple of our brands have turned into kind of like a cult following. Monster High is one of them, and in turn, some of the designers of the product have become celebrities in their own right, without them even wanting that to come to them. We're at Comic-Con every year, and they're on panels, and people want their autographs, so they have gained followers, and all these fans just started following their personal accounts, which was totally crazy for our designers. So we worked really closely with them to just give them some guidelines to set up a more of a professional, celebrity type of account where they just talk about brand specific initiatives and content and never anything personal. So I absolutely agree, and I think that a lot of times having the right person out there as an ambassador of your brand who works for the brand is totally great, as long as it's just centered around the company and you keep your personal separate.
That's awesome. You know, I'm going to wrap this up right now, and I want to leave you all with this last topic. We're all professionals in this room talking about brands or a mission or a focus of some sort. And I want to leave you with this. I'm seeing a lot more and more, and secretly I'm writing a children's book right now. It's the sequel to my Light, Bright, and Polite for Professionals and Brands book, and it's how parents of teens and tweens can keep their kids safe and smart. And the underlying idea is how to impress colleges and employers. The last 5 years of my life has been working with awesome brands, teaching them how to really win over and woo their customers, so the customers go, wow, I feel so loyal to this brand, I can't help but not buy their product, because I'm going to buy a product in that realm, and I feel like they have given me so much, either tips or success, or they've been so nice to me. And now we're moving over into the kids space a little bit, and we're building our own brand called Light, Bright, and Polite for Kids. It's called Safe and Smart Social. And I'm seeing this way too much in politics. We've all seen it with the Clippers, unfortunately, recently. Anything that you are posting and you feel as though that it's cool to say personally, let me, as your friend up here, say that if you feel that you're going to rant on Twitter, it's probably not the right place to do it. And I've spoken to 5,650 kids in the last quarter, just in the last 3 months, because I'm doing this whole tour to test out my content. If you feel, as professionals, and you're all my friends now, because this is my little space right now that I'm very passionate about, please consider not sending that. Personally email it to somebody, or text it to someone, or call someone on the phone. It's the world's best app, is your BFF, as I tell teens and tweens nationwide. Just consider that, because I would hate for somebody that has a good heart to send something out on a B2C social network that accidentally goes to their brand, or as we saw with the Match.com parent company, the PR woman, saying something that was totally inappropriate and being the most hated person, literally on multiple continents, unfortunately. So I just leave you with that. We're all in this together. We're trying to manage it for large brands. If you find yourself ranting, consider using another channel, because you never know. It could go to the main network, or you could get discovered and lose your job. And I only say that because I see it with a lot of people these days, and it's unfortunate. So yes, in the back.
I just want to emphasize fun part of that tangent. Abraham Lincoln would write, when he got irritated with someone, he'd write a letter, put it in his desk.
Yes, and not send it.
Not send
So we have something called the 5-minute rule. And if you want to write a darn tweet, you just save it to draft, or write it out on a piece of paper, wait 5 minutes, and we're telling kids nationwide. Call your best friend. If they're not available, it goes to voicemail. Wait 5 minutes. I think we as professionals can do that too, because we get so passionate about our brand. People that are riding the trains that we manage social media for are so vibrant and sometimes so angry that we just need to make sure we step aside for just a moment. So on that note, I really want to, let's give a round of applause for these awesome people. Cool, so we have about 5 minutes. We're going to open up that center divider, and then we're going to have lunch here. I think, lunch is actually on its way. So we're going to open up the center divider. We've got Chipotle burritos for everybody. Enjoy yourself, and then we're going to get started in about an hour.